I needed the money. Babysitting sounded easy. $500 for one night. Too good to be true, right? And it was. The house seemed perfect. The parents seemed nice. A little weird, maybe. But then they gave me the list. They told me to follow every rule exactly if I wanted to see the next morning. I thought they were crazy. I should have listened. Because in that house, the rules aren't to protect the kids. They're to protect you. And I broke one. This is our opening invitation. When you're ready to find out how this night began with the job and the house, just let me know. It had been a rough few months. Rent was suffocating me, my car had decided to imitate an overpriced boat anchor, and my part-time job as a barista wasn't exactly making me rich. I was scrolling through one of those local classified sites, the kind full of questionable job postings and people selling even more questionable secondhand furniture, when I saw it. Babysitter wanted, generous pay, one night only. The generous pay part was an understatement. $500 cash from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. My internal alarm bell should have been going off like a deafening siren, but my empty wallet was singing a much louder, more persuasive tune. I called the number. A woman answered, Mrs. Gable. Her voice was soft, cultured, like honey mixed with something I couldn't quite place. Glass, maybe? She didn't ask many questions. No references, no background checks, just whether I was available next Saturday and, in her words, whether I could follow directions precisely, without deviation. I assured her that I was the king of following directions, desperate for the money. She gave me the address, an older, wealthier part of town I rarely drove through. One of those Victorian neighborhoods with huge, stately homes and ancient trees whose branches looked like gnarled fingers against the twilight sky. When I pulled up that night, the house was impressive, intimidating even. Perfectly trimmed lawn, fresh paint, but there was something about the windows. They were dark, like empty eye sockets, watching. It was probably just nerves, the grandeur of the place. Mr. and Mrs. Gable were perfect, the kind of couple you see in disturbingly wholesome advertisements. Well-dressed, polite smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. They gave me a brief tour of the house. Everything was spotless, full of antiques, cold. Each room looked like a museum exhibit, preserved but lifeless. They said their son, Michael, only 8 years old, was already asleep upstairs. An exemplary sleeper, a blessing really, Mrs. Gable cooed, a little too emphatically, her eyes flicking to the stairs. You probably won't see him all night. Mr. Gable just nodded, his gaze lingering on me for a second too long, unreadable. They seemed incredibly eager to get out, almost relieved, as if they were escaping something. Just before they left, when Mr. Gable was halfway to the car, Mrs. Gable turned, that soft, unblinking smile fixed, and handed me a folded piece of paper. Her fingers were ice cold. And just like that, they were gone, before I could ask about Wi-Fi passwords or where they kept their extra snacks. The silence they left behind was heavy, thick, broken only by the loudest grandfather clock I'd ever heard. It felt like the house itself was holding its breath. I looked down at the folded paper Mrs. Gable had given me. Her fingers were cold. I could still feel the chill. I unfolded it. It wasn't a list of emergency contacts. It was different. It was titled, simply, Instructions for Michael's Nanny. Instructions, plural. There were a lot of them. I began to read, a small, skeptical smile playing on my lips. This was gonna be weirder than I thought. Okay, let's see. Michael is asleep. Do not enter his room after 9 p.m. unless specifically instructed by another rule. Lock all doors and windows by 8:30 p.m. Double check them. The television in the living room may turn on by itself at 10:17 p.m. If this happens, immediately switch it to channel 3 static. Do not watch any other channels that it may show. Leave it on channel 3 for exactly 11 minutes and then turn it off. If you hear a cat meowing outside the kitchen door, do not open it. We do not have a cat. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimes every hour. If it chimes 13 times instead of the correct hour, immediately go to the master bedroom, lock the door, and hide under the bed. Do not come out until you hear a single clear chime from downstairs. You may hear crying coming from the attic between midnight and 1 a.m. If so, take one of the pre-made sandwiches from the refrigerator labeled "For the Attic" and leave it outside the attic door. Knock 3 times and walk away. Do not open the attic door. Do not wait for an answer. Ignore the man in the garden, especially if you see him near the old well. He is not real. If he waves at you, go to a room with no windows and count to 100 slowly. Do not look directly into any mirror after 11 p.m. for more than 3 seconds. If your reflection blinks when you do not blink, close your eyes and say "uninvited" 3 times. A music box in Michael's room may play a lullaby around 3 a.m. This is normal. Do not investigate. However, if the lullaby changes to "Pop Goes the Weasel," you should find Michael and make sure he is completely covered by the blanket, head included, until the music stops. If you receive a call from a blocked number, answer it. A voice may ask for Eliza. Tell them that she no longer resides at this address and hang up immediately. Do not continue the conversation. 11. The kitchen pantry door must remain closed. If you find it open, do not look inside. Close it, lock it, and place a chair against it until morning. Finally, if all else fails and you feel you are in real danger, break the small glass box in the office. The key is under the blotter on the desk, and press the red button, only as a last resort. I finished reading it and actually laughed out loud. It was the most bizarre and complicated set of instructions I had ever seen. Clearly, the Gables were either wealthy eccentrics with a very odd sense of humor, or they were testing me. A prank, I said to myself, a very elaborate and strange prank. I folded the list, put it in my pocket, and decided to just be a normal babysitter. Watch some TV, eat their snacks. What could possibly go wrong? So there I was, alone in a giant, scary house with a list of insane rules. My plan? Ignore them. I checked on Michael once. He was just a bulge under a heavy comforter, fast asleep. Typical kid. I settled into the plush couch, found the remote, and flipped through endless channels. The Gables had every streaming service imaginable. For a while, everything was normal, boring even. I texted my friends, complained about my weird employers, and ate what I assumed were organic artisanal cheese snacks from their well-stocked pantry. Rule number 11 about the pantry door being closed? Yeah, right. It was unlocked and full of snacks. Score 1 for me. Around 9:30 p.m., I did a quick check of the locks, per rule number 2. All secure. I felt a little like a security guard. The house was silent except for that damn clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Each tick seemed like a countdown to something. But to what? A prank? Were the Gables going to jump out in masks? I half expected so. It would be less scary than silence.
Then 10 p.m. came. Then 10:15 p.m. I was in the middle of some bad reality show, completely absorbed in who was going to get a rose or something, when it happened. At exactly 10:17 p.m., as rule number 3 said, the TV screen went black. It went dark. Then it blinked back on, but on a different channel. It showed a room, an empty room with a single wooden chair in the center, lit by a bare swinging bulb. No sound. Just that eerie, static-filled image. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a channel I recognized. It wasn't on their cable package. I grabbed the remote, my heart pounding. Switch to channel 3, static, immediately, the rule said. My thumb hovered over the number 3. A part of me wanted to see what else was on that strange channel. What if it was just a crosstalk, some arty foreign film? But Mrs. Gable's icy fingers, her voice precise. Do not watch any other channels she may show. I dialed 003. Deafening static. Leave it on channel 3 for exactly 11 minutes, then turn it off. 11 minutes? I set a timer on my phone. Those were the longest 11 minutes of my life. Just me, the silent house, the ticking of the clock, and the roar of static. I kept staring at the windows, waiting to see that man in the garden from rule number 7. Nothing, just darkness. When the timer finally went off, I reached for the remote and turned off the TV. Silence again. But this silence felt different, creepy, alert. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Okay, so a rule, a bizarre coincidence, faulty TV timer, weird default channel, right? There had to be a logical explanation. But as I sat there, the laughter was gone. The house no longer felt empty. It felt aware. And I couldn't get the image of that empty room, that swinging lamp, that single waiting chair out of my head. What would have happened if I hadn't changed the channel? The thought gave me chills. Midnight. The house seemed to sigh around me. And then, right on cue, a cat. Meowing pitifully outside the kitchen door, just as rule number 4 had warned. We don't have a cat. I remembered Mrs. Gable's neutral tone. I peered out the window. Nothing. Just the dark garden. But the meowing persisted, sounding more and more desperate, almost human. It was a struggle not to open the door, not to just check. But the memory of that TV incident, the feeling of static, I stayed where I was. The meowing eventually faded, replaced by an even deeper silence. I retreated to the living room, the list clutched in my hand. Every nerve was on edge. I kept checking the clock, 12:30 a.m., 12:45 a.m. Then, just as rule number 6 had predicted, the crying. Faint at first, from upstairs, from the attic. The crying of a child, thin, sharp, utterly heartbreaking. My stomach churned. Michael was asleep, I was sure of it. This was something else. Take one of the pre-made sandwiches, leave it outside the attic door, knock 3 times and walk away. Don't open it, don't listen. The words echoed in my head. This was insane. Feeding a ghost? A crying attic? But after TV, after the cat, I wasn't going to risk it. I set the sandwich down. My hand shook as I knocked. 1, 2, 3. The sound was deafening in the quiet hallway. I turned and practically ran down the stairs, my heart pounding. There was no answer. I didn't want to hear. I just curled up on the couch, watching the minutes drag by. Then the grandfather clock began to chime. 1 a.m., 2, 3. I counted along, a knot of dread in my stomach. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It rang 13 times. Rule number 5. My blood ran cold. If it rings 13 times, go immediately to the master bedroom, lock the door, and hide under the bed. Do not come out until you hear a single, clear chime. I was hyperventilating. Under the bed, like a terrified child. What was going to happen? What did 13 chimes mean? I lay there, trying to control my breathing, listening. The house was completely silent. Then, footsteps, heavy, shuffling,
coming up the stairs. My heart stopped. They stopped right outside the bedroom door. I could hear breathing, a wet, uneven sound, and a soft, almost curious sniffing at the bottom of the door. I knew I was there. Knew. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying. For the bell, for the morning, for anything. The sniffing stopped. The footsteps receded. Minutes stretched into an eternity. My muscles ached. And then, a single, clear, almost gentle bell rang from downstairs. Gentle, like a dinner bell. I waited, hardly daring to breathe. Was it a trick? But the rule said. I crept slowly outside. I unlocked the door. The hallway was empty, silent, as if nothing had happened. But the air was cold. So cold. The cold, it was a different kind of cold now. Not just in the house, it was in my bones. I didn't dare leave the master bedroom after the bell, even though the rule implied I could. Something felt ready, waiting. I checked the list again, my hands shaking so badly I could barely read it. There were still hours until 8. Hours. And the worst rules, they always seem to cluster around 3 a.m. Rule number 8. Do not look directly into any mirror after 11 p.m. for more than 3 seconds. If your reflection blinks when you don't blink, close your eyes and say, "Uninvited," 3 times. I avoided my reflection like the plague. When I had to walk past the large vanity mirror, I walked with my eyes mostly closed. I wasn't going to test that one, not after everything else. Then, around 2:50 a.m., the music box. Rule number 9. A music box in Michael's room may play a lullaby at about 3 a.m. This is normal. It was a sweet, sad melody. For a moment, it was almost peaceful. Deceptively so. I held my breath, waiting, praying that it wouldn't change. No. God, no. If the lullaby changes to "Pop Goes the Weasel," you must find Michael and make sure he is completely covered by the blanket, head included, until the music stops. My heart leapt into my throat. Michael. I had almost forgotten him, the real reason I was here. But the thought of leaving that room, of facing whatever was out there, but the rule was specific. It implied danger to Michael. The hallway seemed a mile long. Every shadow danced. The music was grating, piercing my skull. I pushed open the door to Michael's room. He was there, a small lump on the bed. But the blanket was on the floor. And his eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling, reflecting the faint moonlight. He wasn't asleep. He was frozen. I covered him. I prayed. The music went on and on, a loop of hell. Then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, silence. It just stopped, mid-note. I waited. Slowly, I peeked out from under the covers. Michael was asleep, breathing normally, like nothing had happened. But the air in the room was thick with something, a sickly sweetness, and a new kind of dread. What was it protecting him from? Or what was it protecting me from by making me focus on him? Morning came, 8 a.m. The Gables came in, all smiles. The house was clean, quiet. They paid me. "We'll call you back," Mrs. Gable said, her eyes shining. I never answered their calls. I still see that list in my nightmares. So if you ever see an ad for a babysitting job with a long list of strange rules, just run. Some rules aren't meant to keep things out. They're meant to keep you in, or to let something else know you're there, forever. Morning came, 8 a.m. The Gables came in, all smiles. The house was clean, quiet. They paid me. "We'll call you back," Mrs. Gable said, her eyes shining. I never answered their calls. I still see that list in my nightmares. So if you ever see an ad for a babysitting job with a long list of strange rules, just run. Some rules aren't meant to keep things out. They're meant to keep you in, or to let something else know you're there, forever. You survived the night. This time, the rules were followed, or the consequences were somehow avoided. But that house isn't the only one with a list. The world is full of places with their own bizarre instructions, their own hidden dangers, especially as night falls and the clock, as it does now, approaches that hour when the veil between worlds is thinnest. Are you sure you know all the rules for your safety? At Urban Echoes, we investigate these lists. We unravel the warnings. We share the stories of those who followed the rules and those who, to their eternal regret, didn't. Want to find out what other macabre instructions are out there? What are the rules for surviving an encounter in the dark woods? Or what to do if your dark web doppelganger calls you? Check out these other survival guides. Each one could be the difference between a shiver and a final scream. If you want access to more of these guides to the unexplained, if you want to understand the unspoken rules of our haunted world, sign up. Join the Urban Echoes community. We read the fine print of horror so you don't have to. Sleep well if you can follow all your own rules tonight.